Why is it that crying feels like weakness, even though it actually takes real courage? As a guy, I genuinely do not remember the last time I cried. Like, I have no clue. But one of the few times I remember crying in my teenage years was a few years ago. And I wasn't the only one crying. See, at the time I was on a late night Discord call with one of my friends, playing Omori. I didn't realize it then, but that moment would end up changing my whole perspective on not only crying, but emotions too. See, for me, growing up crying was a normal thing, but as a dude when I started hitting my teenage years, I realized crying just wasn't really a thing guys did. Certainly not publicly. My dad and older brothers never cried openly. I only saw them cry at funerals and weddings. So when I hit my teens, I thought guys just didn't cry. But it wasn't just crying. Expressing my emotions and how I feel is something I've always personally struggled with, particularly in my teenage years. I would often tell people I'm fine when I wasn't because it just felt easier that way. It often felt like I would have all these feelings, thoughts, and emotions in my head, but my mouth never opened. I never talked about them. But then my friend introduced me to Omori. So I bought my copy of the game, and for the next few months, every Friday night we would spend an hour or two playing Omori. From the beginning of the game, you could tell it was special. The game starts off with you in a white void, with nothing but a few personal items. At first, the white space feels kind of like a weird tutorial area, but the more you play, the more you realize that this room represents something deeper: isolation. Sunny retreats here whenever things get overwhelming. See, Sunny constantly shifts between reality and the dream world, and this white room is the bridge between them. In the dream world, you explore colorful fantasy lands with your friends. It feels like unicorns and rainbows as you discover new areas and meet new characters in this vibrant world. But the real world is the opposite. The real world feels much more bland and normal. Within the real world, you reconnect with the same old friends from the dream world. See, for some reason, Sunny has become a shut-in and hasn't talked to his friends in years. From this, it quickly becomes clear that there's a deeper connection between the two worlds, and that something has happened to tear your friendship group apart. As you progress, you slowly uncover hints of a tragic event that caused Sunny to shut himself off and fall into a deep depression. That's the thing, the dream world isn't just a fantasy, it's a coping mechanism built to protect Sunny from the painful truth. Throughout the game, Sunny is forced to slowly confront this truth and his fears, through literal monsters in battle that represent his emotional trauma he's been burying for years. It's not just fears that Sunny learns to confront, but his own emotions too. In Omori, emotions aren't weaknesses, they're literally part of your battle strategy. Instead of having just health bars and different RPG stats, the characters also have emotions, which can give the characters an edge in battle. The main emotions, sadness, happiness, and anger, create this scissors, paper, rock kind of gameplay. Between all of your friends in the party, you have to manage their emotions and take advantage of the one most effective against your opponent. I think that's a subtle way for the game to tell you emotions aren't necessarily good or bad. Emotions aren't flaws or even things to constantly hide. Instead, emotions are just kind of feedback to what's happening around you in the world. There's something that is constantly changing. Emotions can be helpful in certain situations, but not so much in others. While I was playing Omori, without even realizing it, I started adapting this mindset of emotions. Just like how in the game the characters use emotions to help in battle, I was using my own emotions to help me in life. Like, take anger for an example. While at first anger appears to be a negative emotion, as it just isn't good to let it out on other people. If you instead take that anger and channel it into something like a sport, then you suddenly have this great motivator for energy that propels you to do better. And that's exactly what I did. Of course, it's the same for other emotions too, like sadness. Sadness acts as an indicator to pain. It slows you down for a reason. It forces you to process what happened, to sit with it, and to actually heal. Kind of like if you didn't feel pain when you touched a hot pan, you would get hurt way more, because you wouldn't know you're in pain and that you're damaging your body. As I continued to play through Omori, pretty early on, I realized that Sunny's sister, Mari, has passed away. She's simply missing in the real world, and all the other characters refer to her in past tense. But of course, in the dream world, Mari is still alive and well. Instead, it's Basil that's mysteriously disappeared. As the play progresses, there feels like there's two main objectives in the game. There's the clearly pointed out objective of recovering Basil in the dream world. Then there's the more implied objective in the real world of determining what happened all those years ago. What was the catalyst that led not only to Mari's death, but also to the friendship group splitting up? Of course, it's not until the very end of the game that the truth surrounding Mari's death is revealed. I don't want to spoil the big reveal at the ending, but it's definitely one of the saddest story beats ever. When the truth about Mari's death was finally revealed, it hit me like a truck. A heavy, crushing weight that I wasn't prepared for. I remember exactly where I was, sitting in the corner of my room on my beanbag. It was late at night and I was on a Discord call with my friend, both of us deep into the game. As the climax unfolded, the room felt quieter, the words heavier. Usually we would take turns reading out different characters' dialogue, but this time we just read in silence. Then, suddenly, without warning, my friend muted himself. I could hear nothing but the silence on the call. That silence felt louder than any noise. Minutes passed and I didn't know what to say. I just sat there. Finally, he unmuted himself and quietly apologized. His voice a little shaky, he said, "Sorry. I just needed a moment." I understood completely. The tears were welling up in my eyes too. In that moment, I felt such an overwhelming sadness to the point where my heart felt so heavy, I wondered if it had stopped beating. I felt that way because I could imagine how Sunny must feel. As someone with my own siblings, I can imagine how traumatic it must have been for Sunny to go through all that. In fact, if that did happen, I don't know if I'd ever be able to find the courage to move on. Something shifted in me from that experience. It might sound stupidly obvious to say it now, but I think Omori taught me the importance of empathy. Crying and expressing your emotions is the first step towards empathy. In turn, empathy lets us better understand each other. And that understanding is what forges deeper, more meaningful relationships. That's why it's so important to allow yourself to express your emotions and even cry. It's okay to let it out and talk to people sometimes, which to me is a very important lesson. Back in high school, I often wondered why I could never really connect with anyone around me. Sure, I had friends, but all we did was play video games together now and then. If you've watched some of my other videos, you might know that I was a bit of a shut-in in my early high school days. I almost never hung out with friends outside of school. Looking back now, I feel like I was so naive. How could I not see the importance of something so simple as expressing how I feel? It still amazes me how such a small difference led to such an overwhelming change in my friendships. By being more open and honest, I finally feel like I have a couple of friends I can talk to about anything. It feels like being more open is the secret ingredient to friendship. Kind of like how Sunny kept everything bottled up. The guilt, the grief, the fear, it was only when he finally let himself face it and let it out that he started to heal. And that's what allowed him to truly reunite with his friends. I'm so glad I got the good ending because it inspired me to want to build closer friendships. And now, years later, having those closer friends feels like having a safety net ready to catch me when life gets hard. Because I know, no matter how wild the situation I get into, one of my friends will be there to catch me. No matter how I feel or what's happened, I know they'll be there to just sit in the mud with me and listen. Or even give me advice if I ask for it. And I'm ready to do the same for them. I won't lie, it did feel really weird at first, going from a very reserved and introverted person to someone talking more openly about how I feel. But it was well worth it. The whole experience actually reminds me of a conversation I once had. A friend of mine once told me a story about a patient she had once. The patient she had was a man who was very scared to have his surgery to the point where he was crying and crying. He couldn't even stop shaking until they put him to sleep. The man later asked my friend how he was during the operation, and she told him the truth, that he cried non-stop. The man told my friend that he was so scared he didn't remember anything at all, which made me think it takes real guts to cry. Real men are scared but do it anyway, because it's way harder to open yourself up and try to talk and acknowledge all of your feelings than simply shutting them out. And that's true for that man having the surgery, my friend playing Omori, and me too. To me, Omori will forever be one of the games that may have very well changed the trajectory of my entire life. Not just because it was thought-provoking, but also because it led me to actually trying to take action. And I want this video to be the same for you. So there's this thing I want you to do. It will only take like 30 seconds of your day. All I want you to do is something called the one honest sentence. Every day for a week, just try saying one honest sentence about how you feel out loud. It can be to a friend, a family member, or even to yourself in a journal, but bonus points if it's to a person face to face. It sounds small, but these little moments of being open are like emotional push-ups. You can't see the muscle growing at first, but each one builds up. Each one makes it easier to open up the next time. To not only better connect yourself with others, but also better understand yourself. Because in life, just like in Omori, the emotions you learn to face don't make you weaker. Instead, they're the exact things that make you stronger. Keep your sword sharp. Bye bye.